As a premier community in Hampton Roads, James City County strives to maintain a high quality of life for all citizens through sound fiscal management and legislative actions. In an ongoing effort to increase transparency, your Board of Supervisors holds public meetings to garner citizen input before making important decisions. Here is tonight's meeting agenda. Stay tuned. The Board of Supervisors meeting will begin shortly.
Oh, jeez. That was kind of a... There we go.
Fix that later.
Yeah. Yes. Somebody glue that down. Call this meeting of the James City County Board of Supervisors regular meeting to order. Good evening, everyone. Mr. Porter, if you'll do the roll, please.
Yes, Mr. McGlennon at the far right represents the Roberts District.
Here.
Next to him is Mr. Eisenhower, who represents the Jamestown District and is Vice Chairman to the Board.
Here.
Mr. Sadler represents the Stonehouse District.
Here.
Mr. Hipple represents the Powhatan District.
Here.
And Ms. Larson, Chair of the Board, represents the Berkeley District.
Here. Thank you. We will have a moment of silence, and then we will have our Pledge of Allegiance, which will be led by William Holt, and I'm going to let Mr. Hipple introduce Mr. Holt.
Tonight's pledge leader is William Holt. Will is an honor roll fifth grader at Norge Elementary, where he participates in Rec Connect programs. At Norge, he also plays the violin and advanced recorder and is a contributor to the Beep Beep News. His favorite activities include playing flag football and playing defense on the Legacy Soccer travel team. Will is the son of Paul and Carol Holt. Thank you, Will, for coming out.
I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you so much.
I'm full, Will. Thank you very much. I appreciate you doing the pledge for us. There you go, buddy. Keep up the good work.
Nice job. Next will be public comment. Before I call our speakers this evening, I do just want to make two announcements. We did make them at our work session, but I want to follow up by making them here. First, we held our board retreat to discuss the job description of the county administrator and to do a few housekeeping procedural things. And we want to thank the Jamestown Settlement for that, for having us that day. Jamestown Yorktown Foundation, Mr. Phil Emerson, we appreciate that very much. At that meeting, we did take one action item, which was that our meetings will remain at 5 p.m., our regular business meetings. That was by a vote of 4-1, but we know that that has come up several times in public comment, and so it was suggested that we just make that an action item and vote on that. And so for the considerable time being, we will be continuing to meet at 5 for our regular meeting and 4 for our work session. The other item that had been brought up over the years in the public comment time was an online checkbook, and our Acting County Administrator, Mr. Porter, is looking into that and has told us that we can expect that in April or May time. April. All right, time period. So I just wanted to make sure that we made those two announcements. And with that, we will have public comment. And first is Barbara Henry.
Good afternoon, Chairman Larson, members of the board, Mr. Porter, Mr. Kinsman. Barbara Henry, 141 Devon Road. I am here this afternoon on behalf of the tax-paying residents of James City County to thank the board for the decision to post our monthly expenditures on our county website, known as the online checkbook. Finally and thankfully, after over 2 years of advocating for this, along with the help of several other citizens, an online checkbook has come to fruition, and the board can now see how easy, quick, and inexpensive it is to install. Transparency is and always has been of the utmost importance, and now the tax-paying citizens of the county will be able to see, in line item form, exactly where their taxpayer dollars are being spent. It is a shame, however, that nearly 2 years have been unnecessarily lost in getting it implemented. There are 2 supervisors that were instrumental in getting the online checkbook for our website. Thank you to Supervisor Eisenhower, my representative, for your immediate, decisive action in this matter. Your efficiency in facilitating the process is very much appreciated. Thank you very much, Mr. Eisenhower. Also, Supervisor Sadler, thank you very much for always having been, since your time on the board and even before, an advocate of this type of transparency, as an online checkbook was part of your campaign platform. Thank you very much, Supervisor Sadler, for your involvement in getting this accomplished. We, the residents, can now look forward to the posting of our checkbook on our county website, April 1st. End of comment. Thank you.
Joseph Swanenberg.
Good evening, board members. Joseph Swanenberg, 3026 The Point Drive. Mr. Porter, I'm not sure your microphone was picking up earlier, so just wanted to make you aware there. First thing I have is what I suspect may be a safety issue or concern. About a week and a half ago, I was coming out Forge Road and came to Richmond Road, getting ready to turn right, and there were 4 or 5 vehicles in front of me. And when I stopped, I looked over and I'm looking right at the firehouse. Well, I'm right in the entrance or ingress and egress to Fire Station 1. And it dawned on me, if there happens to be a fair amount of traffic on Richmond Road, and we could have 7, 8 vehicles there, and they may actually be blocking the ability of emergency vehicles to leave the building in the event of an emergency. I don't know if it's appropriate for that area to be marked off for people not to stop there, but I wanted to pass that on to you, and hopefully we can pass it on to emergency services and see if it is something we should or shouldn't address. So I did want to pass that on. The second item, I want to follow up and also say thank you for the installation of the online checkbook coming here April 1st. And I guess I consider it one small step for the citizens of James City County and one giant leap for the government of James City County in the form of transparency. I hope we can learn from this. I was thinking about it while Mrs. Henry was speaking, that a couple of things have changed since December. We have a new board member. We have a new county administrator. And accolades go to Mr. Eisenhower for following through this, being the next one up here, as well as Mrs. Sadler for always standing up for this. But I hope we can learn from this and use the example of Mr. Porter when we do have the new county administrator, that the county administrator, in fact, does work for the board, not conversely, and I hope we can continue forward in that manner. Thank you very much.
With that, we will move to presentations, and we have Storm Ready recognition for James City County. Mr. Bill Sampler, Warning Coordination Meteorologist from the National Weather Service in Wakefield, is going to come forward. Good evening.
Good afternoon, Chairman Larson, members of the board, Mr. Porter, citizens of the county. I've asked Sarah Rue, the Department of Emergency Services Deputy Coordinator, to come up with me. I'm here this afternoon to formally recognize James City County as a storm-ready community. It's a process that's been going for several months, and actually it's been started a few years ago under the previous coordinators. And Sarah did the work and made it come to fruition. If you're not familiar with Storm Ready, Storm Ready is a process that started back in 1999 after a devastating flash flood out in northwest Arkansas in the Fort Smith area. And it was at that time where the realization existed that A, there wasn't a lot of preparedness, but most importantly, there wasn't a lot of coordination between the National Weather Service and the local officials in that area. A lot has changed over the last 20 years. It's a lot easier to become storm ready, but the fact that it's a months-long process to do so says a lot for Sarah and the work that she did. So what Storm Ready actually does is it actually says that the county or the city, depending upon the jurisdiction, has gone through the effort to make sure that they're not only able to receive National Weather Service watch warning information routinely and through multiple sources, but also monitor weather conditions, and thirdly, provide information about National Weather Service warnings and other emergency information to the citizens. And James City County has met or exceeded all of the guidelines and qualifications necessary. So I want to formally congratulate Sarah and James City County on becoming a storm-ready community. I have a plaque here that I want to present to the county. And in addition, you all get one road sign that you're welcome to place at whatever prominent location you wish to place it. There's a process by which you can either manufacture additional signs if you have a sign shop, or you can purchase additional signs. But I just want to again say congratulations to the county and thank you to Sarah for her work in making this happen.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Sarah, for all your work. With that, I'm going to pass the gavel down to Supervisor Sadler, and we will go in. We're going to recess this meeting, go into our JCSA meeting.
Okay. Call to order this meeting of the James City Service Authority Board of Directors. Mr. Powell, good evening.
Good evening.
Would you please call the roll?
Mr. McGlennon.
Here.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Here.
Mr. Hippel.
Here.
Ms. Larson.
Here.
Ms. Sadler.
Here. We will have a public comment section now, or do we have any speaker cards for this evening? None for this evening. Well, with that, we'll move to our consent calendar. Number one, minutes adoption, January 2nd, 2018 organizational meeting, January 9th, 2018 regular meeting. Number two, the update to withdrawal impact mitigation plan. Would anyone like to pull an item for discussion?
Move the consent calendar.
Thank you. Mr. Powell?
That does not require a roll call. You can do-
Okay, I had voice vote on here, okay. We will now move into public hearings. We have
Well,
one.
excuse me.
I'm sorry.
Call for the vote.
Yeah, just call for a vote. All those in favor.
Voice vote.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're good. Okay. We'll move into our public hearings. We have one this evening, property exchange, lift station 1-7. Mr. Powell, would you please give us an overview?
Madam Chair, members of the board, JCSA has a lift station on Pocahontas Trail, as you can see on the map. It is about 45 years old. It has outlived its useful life, and it's time to replace it. We have reached an agreement with the property owner to do a property swap as part of this upgrade. What this will enable us to do is we will be able to keep the existing lift station operational while we build the new lift station, which will save us considerable money in the process. When the construction process is over, we will swap the property. We will own the property that Quarter Path LLC will give to us, and then we will give them the property that the current lift station is currently located on. So this is, I think, a good arrangement for the Service Authority. Staff recommends approval of the resolution. I would note that in that we would ask for a slight amendment to the resolution and amend the resolution to authorize the general manager to execute the necessary contract agreements as opposed to the board just simply approving the agreement.
Do we have to take any action on that amendment this evening?
Just if it is approved, whoever makes the motion, if they could just make it with that amendment.
With that amendment, okay. That concludes
That concludes my presentation.
Okay, very good. Are there any questions for staff this evening? Oh, okay, then we'll open up our public hearing. Do we have any speaker cards for the public hearing? No? Okay. Then we will close that public hearing and we'll look to the board for discussion and or a motion.
I will move the resolution as amended.
Okay, Mr. Powell, I believe we need a roll call vote for that.
Yes, ma'am. Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Ms. Larson.
Aye.
And Ms. Sadler.
Aye. Next, we have board considerations. We have our pre-budget presentation. Mr. Powell.
Thank you, and I guess before I start, thank you for allowing me to make this presentation today instead of about 3 weeks ago when I had the flu. I appreciate that very much.
Thank you.
So as you recall, the format for this presentation was for the departments to highlight their strategic plan initiatives and specifically focus on the ones that had budgetary implications. So most of the James City Service Authority strategic plan initiatives fall into the first two strategic goal plan areas, which is a sustainable long-term water supply and modern infrastructure, facilities, and technology systems. Under the sustainable long-term water supply, one of the initiatives is to evaluate alternatives for a long-term water supply. I think you're fairly well up to speed on our status with that at the moment. We have submitted a joint permit application for our raw water intake on the Chickahominy River. We have received permits from DEQ and VMRC for that project. The last major permit that's still required for that project is from the Corps of Engineers. They publicly advertised that permit for public comment a little over a month ago. That public comment period expired in February. We're still waiting for the Corps at this point to let us know what those comments are and what our next steps will be. But the public comment period has expired on that. So at the same time that we're pursuing that option, we're also monitoring very closely the SWIFT initiative. That's obviously an HRSD initiative. It's in a pilot project status at this point, so we don't know at this point whether it's viable or not, but that's one of the alternatives that we're looking at very closely. And then the third one that we're looking at this point is the Newport News agreement. At this point, the agreement calls, if the board wants to go into the second phase of that agreement and pay for the second installment, it would require action by July 1 of 2019. I'm operating under the impression at this point that the board's not interested in executing the second phase of that agreement. However, we are open to renegotiating an agreement with Newport News if it would be beneficial to us. We've had some very preliminary discussions with them at this point, but no major progress at this point. So as far as the budgetary implication for this initiative, we are proposing in the fiscal year 1920 budget to continue to set aside dedicated funding for a future long-term water supply. We began that in the last year's budget. The proposed budget calls for $500,000 to be set aside in 2019 and $1 million to be set aside in 2020, with the idea being that setting aside these funds now will help to minimize the impact of borrowing once a final decision is made and an alternative is chosen and pursued. Another one of our initiatives is to update the JCSA asset management plan. JCSA continues to work on the asset management plan, which is important in helping us plan for the long-term needs of the system. It's important to remember that as much as we have focused the last 2 or 3 years on an alternative future water supply, we still need to pay attention to the significant investment we've made in the existing infrastructure. This chart is a product of some of the research that we have done, some of the work that we have done on our asset management plan, and serves as a reminder that we do need to continue to set aside funds to take care of an aging infrastructure. As you can see from the chart, we're getting to the point where we have infrastructure that's in the 20 to 40 year range. We have more of that than we have of infrastructure in the 0 to 20 year range. So that trend will only continue, and I think highlights the point that we need to prepare to be able to pay for the rising cost to maintain the infrastructure as it ages. We propose in the fiscal year 1920 budget to continue to set aside dedicated funds for this purpose in a repair and replacement fund, $617,000 in FY19 and $682,000 in FY20. And again, that continues a practice that we began last year and continues a practice that was recommended by bond rating agencies. And then the last initiative under Goal 1 that I'm going to discuss was to develop a water conservation plan for residents and businesses. We intend to initiate some educational programs and some awareness programs in the upcoming fiscal year. And we also plan to engage the board in a discussion about the issue of irrigation in the coming year. JCSA has a work session scheduled with the board in July. It's our intent to have a discussion about irrigation and possibly discuss some ideas on how to limit irrigation. The idea being that with the strategic plan goal for conservation, that irrigation is really counter to the goal of trying to conserve water. We estimate that about 15% of our water demand is used for irrigation at this point. And that's a high number. So we would, in the upcoming fiscal year, intend to initiate a discussion on that topic. With regard to the Goal 2 area, we do have a ongoing project that you're aware of to replace our meters and to try to get to a point where all of our meters are radio read meters, so the meter readers don't have to get out and read each meter. They can do it electronically. We've been doing this on a very slow basis at this point. The proposed budget will recommend that we allocate $3 million over the 2-year budget to finish this project. If we continue to go at the pace that we're going, it's going to take us 20 years. So I think at some point we need to bite the bullet and expedite the completion of this project. That's what the fiscal year 1920 budget recommends, and it is my intention that once we are converted to all radio read meters, we will then be able to go to a bi-monthly billing schedule instead of a quarterly billing cycle. A couple other things I would mention that weren't necessarily part of the strategic plan. There is one new project in the CIP. It is a project of opportunity, and it involves upgrading the existing water lines as part of 2 major road improvement projects in the county. The first one, which will occur in fiscal year 19, is part of the Long Hill Road Improvement Project, and the second one is on Centerville Road. In both of these instances, VDOT will be responsible for the cost to move the infrastructure. JCSA will only be responsible for funding the delta to increase the pipe size. These projects will greatly improve our capacity for the future, and I think these are good opportunities and good investments for us to make that we'll be able to make much cheaper given the partnership that we can conduct these projects in with VDOT. 2 last things that I will mention in closing. One is grinder pumps. Our grinder pump program is currently not fully funded, and the fees that we collect. The budget will recommend an increase in the fee from $260 to $300. That still will not make it revenue neutral. We would still be losing money on that program, even with that fee increase. But I have recommended in the budget that we try to at least narrow that gap some. And then finally, I would just mention that the budget does recommend that we continue the incremental rate increases that were recommended by the 2015 Comprehensive Rate Study. As mentioned earlier, we're using the bulk of that money to set aside funds for a future alternative water supply and to put into a repair and replacement fund to fund our future maintenance costs. With that, the last slide is, I like to show this whenever I get the chance, is to reiterate that we continue to have the second lowest combined rate in the region, and by a fairly significant amount, even with the rate increases that have been enacted over the last 2 to 3 years. With that concludes my presentation, and be happy to answer any questions you might have.
I was wondering what would make us neutral on grinder pumps? What type of cost?
We are typically losing about $100,000 a year right now on that program. In rough figures, we generally collect about $200,000. It's generally costing us about $300,000. The $40 increase will cut into that at about a quarter or a third. So the fee increase would have had to have gone to over $400 or in the neighborhood of $400 to make that cost neutral.
And that's the initial cost of the pump. That's a one-time cost once you install.
The grinder pump program is basically an insurance policy and a maintenance program. What the owner receives for that is we privatize it. We have a contractor who is on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and they respond if there are any issues with the grinder pump. If anything needs to be replaced or repaired, it's all covered at no cost to the homeowner or to the grinder pump owner. But the service authority is absorbing some of the cost of that program right now.
But is the $400 a yearly, or is it a one-time cost?
It's a yearly cost. I'm sorry, I misunderstood your question. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
It's spread out on your quarterly payments. So it's four equal payments right now on your quarterly bill.
Is there a way to do that as far as if you have a breakdown and it's during emergency time, you incur the cost instead of a breakdown during regular time? Would that be something that would help with the cost of it? If I had a grinder pump and it went down at midnight and I called y'all and you had to come out, you're paying premium time.
You pay, right, because you're paying overtime. Right.
So would that be something that you could put in there that if we have to come out at premium time, we're gonna have to charge premium costs, but if we come out during the regular daytime, then we can, keep the cost pretty close. That's something to look at.
I mean, that one of the things that you can look at as part of this program is what the grinder pump owner actually gets as part of the policy. The policy that we have, and like I said, I tend to think of it as an insurance policy, but it's a very good insurance policy, because once the owner pays that fee, they don't have to worry about paying anything else for that year, no matter what goes wrong.
Yep.
So it's a rich policy. One of the options to lower the cost on this program is we could lessen the benefit of the policy. That is an option. I've thought about that. My recommendation after consideration was to keep the policy the same and try to recoup some of the additional cost. But looking at the policy and the richness of it is another way to tackle it if that was the will of the board.
Does everybody that has a grinder pump in James City County doing this, or could they use a private person to maintain their grinder pump?
They can use private. I mean, they have to meet certain specifications to be able to qualify for our maintenance program. So they can use alternatives. I think ours is more popular because of what I said. It's a very rich benefit. There's more. The private sector isn't generally going to offer the program that we offer.
And is maintenance required on and I don't have a grinder pump, so I don't.
Mm-hmm.
Is maintenance required yearly? So is every grinder pump that's in our program getting maintenance once a year? Or?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
No, not necessarily.
All right. And sorry.
Okay.
Okay, thank you.
So I strongly advocated for the restoration of this program, which we ended for a while, in large part because one of the neighborhoods that I represented, which I no longer represent, so some of you might be thinking about that, was experiencing an exceptionally high rate of failure. And that seemed to have to do with a combination of poor installation and perhaps poor inspection in that particular neighborhood. The cost for replacement was about $6,000 for the grinder pump at that time. And the thing that has perplexed me about this particular policy is that my expectation was that once replaced and properly installed, a grinder pump should have a pretty long lifespan of 20 years or more. But it appears as if they're being replaced within a decade. At least at the rate that we're going, it's about a 10% per year, isn't it, Doug?
It has come down the last couple of years, but we've had some very high years as well. I don't know that we've ever been as high as 10%.
Well, it does seem, though, that we're replacing them at a faster rate than I think
that's
I would have anticipated.
Right.
So it really does require us to kind of take a look at what's going on with it. And maybe we need to explore the possibility that there are more durable pumps out there. Maybe we have to think about something like a deductible or something like that. But it is a problem. From my perspective, it is an issue that ought to be considered anytime we are being asked to approve a development in which a grinder pump is necessary in order to handle the wastewater from a home. We're basically fighting against nature and the topography in order to put a house in a place where maybe it wasn't really best suited. I think we do really need to look at this issue, but recognize that we have allowed the construction to occur in these places. And certainly when we had the big problem in that subdivision I mentioned before, it was at least a reasonable possibility that the improper installation had not been caught, and that we wanted to make sure that homeowners were not being held responsible for something that we might have contributed to.
One of the other things I would note, just for your information, the fee for this program used to be $300. It was reduced to $260, I think, about 5 or 6 years ago. So there is some precedent for the fee to be $300.
And I think it was dropped down because at that time it wasn't costing as much to
well,
operate.
I think from the information I have read, the cost came down because there were fewer replacements. Right. But there's still a difference between replacements and repair. I mean, and that's true. We are replacing fewer, but there are others that still need to be repaired. So there's still that expense in the program.
I wanted to ask a question, if I could, too, about the infrastructure.
Mm-hmm.
And I know a little bit about how you fared through the cold weather, just because I've seen some emails.
Yeah.
But could you talk about that for a moment? Because your crews have been working very hard.
Yes.
And also citizens have had some periods of no water.
Yes.
So.
Yes. A lot of these breaks were triggered by the cold weather and then the thawing that occurs afterwards. Some were not, but cold weather or not, the underlying issue for most of the breaks was just the material of the infrastructure. The vast majority of the breaks were what we call saddles, which connect the main line to the lateral that goes to the house. In certain areas of the county where the soil is a little wetter, the old saddles were more conducive to corrosion. We use a different material today that's not as subject to corrosion, but wet corrosive soils and the materials that were used 25 years ago or in that time frame, that is the underlying factor behind most of the breaks that we've experienced in the last few months.
I just wanted to add another comment about the structure that we have here, and obviously nobody likes to see rates go up, but I think it has been very sensible to adjust our policies, first of all, so that our infrastructure is really not being dependent on the high rates of growth that we have experienced in the past, that we have built in now. Part of our fee structure is maintenance of our system on the base of fees that we charge to our customers, and I think that's very sensible. We still have a very, very low rate, but also the very proactive nature of trying to address our future water needs and looking at as many options as possible. So that's a very good job that the Service Authority is doing, and thanks to you for your leadership on that, Doug. Thank you.
I've got something. Doug, I'd like to see if you can put it together. Cost on the age of the infrastructure, the 20, 40, and 50-year pipes, if that can be put in there, as far as so that the board and the citizens understand that as these pipes are aging, if we don't take care of them, then what are the costs, not only for the pipes that break, but it may be a pipe that breaks and then it breaks again when you're repairing it. And you know how you have that added on, you're digging more and you're working harder. And so if we don't take care of them now, what's the 20-year pipes cost going to be, the 30-year or the 40-year and the 50-year? And of course, the 50-year is going to be our worst. And I know initially it'll all cost pretty much the same, but as you get into older pipes and saddles and everything else, you're creating more of a problem down the road. So if you could kind of put some numbers together that, guys, if we wait, an escalation of cost as far as, you know, what the economy is doing too. If we wait, you know, this is just going to compound to this point.
Right.
And then also with the water line sizes and all that, I know we've got Croker Road coming up, Skiss Creek, Old 60. So if you'll keep an eye out on those projects as they're coming, you know, along, and what we need to do with those, so we can kind of get an eye ahead of things.
Okay.
Some of these pipes and the things that have been, we've had, you know, breakages over the recent months. Do you have a set schedule as to when they're replaced, X amount of years, or do we literally just wait till they?
That's a good question, and that's part of the reason that we're getting more into asset management planning. Part of asset management planning is determining which assets you fix or repair or replace before they fail, and determining which ones that you just wait until they fail. So I don't really have a good answer for you tonight, but that's part of what we're thinking about as part of this asset management plan is what do we repair before it breaks or before we think it's going to break, and what do we just run until it fails. Typically on water lines, we've been just, you know, until they fail. You do have a couple of neighborhoods in your CIP that they've been in your CIP for a while, and we still haven't fully funded them. But we do have a couple of areas in the county that we have identified where we really do want to go in and upgrade and repair now. But that's not something we've really been systematically doing up to this point.
And then we're talking about repair versus replace. So when they break, we're just repairing, but that pipe may need to be replaced. So that's a longer cost and a lot more.
I will offer that I can remember when I first got on the board many years ago. Mr. Glenn has already alluded to it, that essentially we were paying for this infrastructure with new connection fees. And so that was not a sustainable model in the long run, and I am very happy to see this asset management plan come along, because to me it's a much more rational approach to dealing with the problems that we anticipate coming down the line.
And I would note, an asset management plan is not something that's ever completed. It's always, you're always working on it and trying to update it and make it better.
Open-ended.
Sort of like my wife's house project.
Yes.
I'll do it. Everybody good?
Yes, ma'am.
All right, then, so setting a public hearing, fiscal year 2019 utility rates.
Yes, this is basically just a follow-up to the conversation we just had. In the instance where there are recommendations for rate increases, the Board of Directors is asked to set a public hearing date for the public hearing on those rate increases and the budget adoption. This resolution requests that the Service Authority Board of Directors establish April 10th as the public hearing for that, obviously the same date as the Board of Supervisors public hearing on the budget.
Would you mind explaining, if you wouldn't mind, because we get phone calls frequently from folks about their water rates, the benefit to implementing this rate structure now? I think you alluded to it earlier with in terms of our long-term water goals. So would you mind just reiterate that again, please?
Well, I guess the idea behind the comprehensive rate study that was conducted in 2015 is that we're going to have some significant expenses in the future. And if to the degree that we can set aside funds now, it will help mitigate the increases that we required in the future. I mean, simplified way, it's pay me now or pay me later. The thought is that it's better, not only for the utility, but for the customer as well, to have gradual incremental increases as opposed to having a dramatic increase all at one time. So that's the philosophy behind it.
The 2015 study and the gradual increase in the rates, what time period was that phased in over? Right?
10 years.
10 years.
It's a 10-year
Okay.
recommended plan, yeah.
But we're only about halfway through that.
Right, this 2-year budget would only get us to the halfway point. Right.
Okay.
Other questions? Do we have a motion? I believe we need a motion.
Move that we set the public hearing for April 10th, as indicated in the resolution.
And I believe we just need a voice vote for that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, I think that carries. And board request and directives. General manager's update.
I have no further
You've
report.
covered everything as well. So we will be adjourning then until 5 p.m., March 13th, 2018 for the regular meeting. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion?
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, and we're adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Mr. Powell.
Call this meeting. I know we must have a little water damage there or something. Back to order. Before we go further through our agenda, I'd just like to recognize Ms. Mona Foley, Circuit Court Clerk, here in the audience, Chief Ryan Ash, Deputy Chief Steve Rubino, and Mr. Jack Haldeman of our Planning Commission. Thank you all for being here this evening. Appreciate it. With that brings us to our consent calendar. Number 1, minutes adoption. Number 2, Gilly Conservation Easement, approval of accessory structures. 3, continuation grant award, policing in the 21st century, recruiting and hiring initiative, $12,669. Continuation grant award, policing in 21st century technology initiative, $12,444. Grant award VDEM State Homeland Security Program, $46,098. Contract award Deer Circle Restoration Project, $123,456. Contract award Cooley Road Stream Restoration, $221,150. Regional Stormwater Program, MOA. Proposed street name change, Collington Lane to Gale Lane. And we also have number 10, resolution of appreciation, Dr. Jack Edwards, but we may pull that one, I believe. Okay. With that, I'll ask if anybody wants to pull anything, item for discussion.
I ask that we pull number 10 for next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Is there anything else?
Move the adoption of the consent calendar.
Right. Mr. Porter?
Ms. Sadler?
Aye.
Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
So I should say Mr. Gilly was also in the audience this evening. With that, that brings us to public hearings. Do we have any this evening?
No, ma'am.
All right. Board considerations. All right. Board request and directives.
I guess I'll start off. First of all, I just wanted to mention that with several other board members, Ms. Larson, Ms. Sadler, Mr. Eisenhower, I attended the VACO Local Government Day in Richmond, and we also had a short meeting of the Coalition of High Growth Communities at that time. Beyond that, well, there have been lots of other things. Oh, I did want to mention that also, as part of the agreement between the Commonwealth and the consulting parties and Dominion Energy, fund of approximately $15.5 million has been set aside to address mitigation of the impacts of the construction of the 17 towers of horror across the James River by Dominion as they blight on the landscape. But that $15.5 million has been directed to the Virginia Environmental Endowment, and the endowment has been meeting with a technical advisory committee, which they invited me to join, for the purpose of trying to identify ways in which money can be spent to improve water quality in the James River. As part of that grant, they are supposed to pay at least some special attention to what they call the APE, or APE, the area of potential effect. And that would be our community and the area right around Jamestown. So yesterday, there was a meeting for about 2 hours with some of our local county residents, some groups like the James River Association, and others, to talk about some ways in which some of that money could be put to good use in trying to protect water quality or improve water quality in this area. And I think there were some great ideas about improving living shorelines across the James River, perhaps restoring some oyster beds in different places, and some practices of stream restoration, which could have a very positive impact on the flow of water into the James River in this particular area. So just wanted to update the board on that process as it's moving forward. The money will be made available in an annual round of grants. The Environmental Endowment has 10 years to spend the money, but they hope to spend it mostly more rapidly than that, perhaps in as little as 5 years. And so we should start to see some impact of that perhaps later this year. The only other thing I wanted to mention was, obviously, we are always facing a situation where we lose some of our citizens over the course of a year. Since our last meeting, we've had 3 citizens, this community pass away, and I just wanted to make brief mention of them. All 3 of them were people who came to the greater Williamsburg area from other parts of the United States or Virginia. They all made significant contributions to this community, and I just start with Mary Hummelstein, who passed away at the age of 99. She spent much of her later years as a resident of Williamsburg Landing in the Roberts District, but she came to Williamsburg in 1958 with her husband, Carl Hummelstein, when he took over the responsibility as president of the Colonial Williamsburg Foundation. Mary Hummelstein was the kind of person who was just always welcoming, gracious, a wonderful hostess. And she headed Colonial Williamsburg at that time when it was the stop for world leaders as they made their way to Washington and needed to recover from jet lag. Before we had a little bit more modern air travel, and maybe world leaders had less time to recover. But so Colonial Williamsburg really became a center of international affairs, and Ms. Hummelstein was gracious to those leaders and to just about anybody else she came in contact with. She really took on the special responsibility as the First Lady of Colonial Williamsburg to make everyone feel as if this was their home. Ms. Hummelstein obviously will be greatly missed, and extend our warm wishes to Mary Normand and the rest of her family for their loss. Ms. Hummelstein was 99 years old. She was a great figure in this community. Judge W.T. Stone, who passed away at the age of 87, is thought to have been the first African-American judge in the Commonwealth of Virginia. He came to this community at the age of 13 when his mother passed away, and took a bus to Richmond, had no money to get to Williamsburg, had somebody sort of noticed his plight and bought one of his toys from him at a fare that would just pay for his bus trip down to Williamsburg so he could get to his aunt's home. Judge Stone was a very well-known presence in this community and a groundbreaker, and he will also be greatly missed. We extend his family our warm sympathy. 1957, Jim Dorsey came to study at the College of William and Mary, spent a number of years after his college degree in the United States military, but then retired to Williamsburg, where he went to work for the Jamestown settlement, and also to attend just about every William and Mary athletic event that he could find, where he was known as First Down. He also served for about 20 years on our Parks and Recreation Advisory Board, and wish Fran Dorsey and Jim's family our condolences as well. So just wanted to mention those folks who are among the many who've come to this community, like myself and most folks probably in this room at one time or another, and have enriched the community greatly. So thank you.
I was honored to tour the Angels of Mercy Medical Clinic recently. It's located at 7151 Richmond Road in Norge, at Suite 401. Donna Wilmoth of the Board of Directors and Jeff Black, the Executive Director, were kind enough to show me the facility and share their history and their mission to serve the community with quality health care, whether people can afford it or not. They have a therapeutic lifestyle program there that is pretty amazing to listen to how they help their patients, and they emphasize prevention, self-management. And I was particularly impressed with their diabetes program and how they not only treat but educate their patients on that particular illness. I'm sure they'd love for folks to visit their website, which is angelsofmercyclinic.org, to learn more about them. They're a very valuable part of our community, and we appreciate everything that they do. Also, winter is still here, and I would like to make citizens aware of a program sponsored by the Community of Faith Mission, which is the Emergency Winter Shelter Program, which serves the homeless men and women and families in our area. It's a collaboration of more than 30 faith-based congregations, community partners, and volunteers, all of whom offer help, 3 meals a day, transportation for 126 nights of safe shelter to homeless individuals during the coldest months. If you're so inclined, I'd encourage anyone and everyone to visit their website at cofm.info and find out what you can do to help those in need in our community. And that's all I have.
Got a few things. Thursday we have the TPO and PDC meeting, so I'll be attending that with our administrator. So we'll get the chance to go down there and have some fun. I had a meeting with the new secretary, Ms. Valentine, Secretary of Transportation. That went very well. She's very interested in the Hampton Roads area and what she can do down here as far as transportation. We also put out $500 million worth of bonds. That's $500 million that we put out there and did very well. We happened to hit the market at the right time and had another competitor that was going out at the same time, and ended up they couldn't go out, so we were the second largest in the market for that day. And by the end of the day, we're into the area of about $583 million So that all goes into our transportation projects that we're already have listed and ready to go. We'll probably do some more bond letting as we move forward. It'll probably be 3 more till we get to where we need to be. But it's impressive to see the amount of money that's out there and the people that are moving money here and there. And, you know, $500 million, I never thought I'd be signing something that was so large in my life. And it still makes me nervous. But they will look like January of 2019, we'll be signing the contract for Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel. So that'll be moving on, and we're looking at a completion of that by the end of 2024. That'll be a fast-moving project. That's supposedly one of, if not the largest, single transportation projects in the United States. So that's impressive right here in Hampton Roads, and we're part of it here in James City County. So y'all should be very proud. Jim Utterback with VDOT has moved over to the Hampton Roads Bridge Tunnel, and he will be heading that up and taking care of that for us, and he'll see that project all the way through. So there's an extremely lot of things going on in transportation that we're involved in. There's $1.3 billion worth of funds out on the street right now in transportation alone. That's a lot of money. So the money that we're putting in James City County is not sitting on a shelf, it's going to work. And myself and the other members of that group are making sure that it's going in and trying to move that money as quickly as possible to relieve the transportation in our area. And as you can see, I get a lot of response from the first phase of I-64. We started on the second. We'll be shortly starting on the third. And I'm going to work to try to get the fourth one, which isn't on the books yet, the fourth one, which will take us totally out of James City County into New Kent. And I've already told the board members there that we're pushing to get into New Kent, and y'all can have the traffic situation there, but we don't need it in James City County. That's all I've got.
Okay, thank you. As you all know, we have our joint meeting with the school system in March. Mr. Eisenhower and I will be going to our first school liaison meeting for this year next week. Right? Yes, 28th, yes. This month is flying. I did want to make you aware that I did receive an email from Ms. Cook that Jim Regenball will be speaking to us at our joint meeting. I've heard him speak at the Virginia School Boards Association. She's going to be sending us what he will be touching on at our joint meeting, but just to give you some idea, he does have 30 years of experience in state and local budget and tax policy analysis. He served for 12 years on the staff of the Virginia Senate Finance Committee from 87 to 99. So I imagine he's going to be bringing us a picture of the Commonwealth and the lack of education funding.
If I know Mr. Regenball, he'll be bringing you about 40 pictures.
Yes, so we'll look. I think that should be interesting. So, but as I get more information, I will pass that on. I just wanted to speak to. I have been hearing from citizens on Jamestown Road, a neighborhood that has been concerned about the speed, where it goes from 45 down to 35. Mr. Purse has been helping me with that, with VDOT, and so we're looking for some increased signage, and we'll go from there. So I am hearing you. I'm getting your emails, and I appreciate it. And then if I could, just on a personal note, a couple weeks ago, my family went through something that I hope no one else has to go through with my son, and had a fire. And I just want to give a personal note, if I could, to the first responders. It was A shift that was working on this particular day. There was units from James City Stations 1, 3, and 4 responded, as well as units from York County Station 5 in the city of Williamsburg. Also, there was considerable help from the James City County Police and Mr. Porter and Fire Marshal. I just appreciate everybody that came out and has continued to reach out and help Rob and go through something like this. So if I just a personal moment there, I'm a big supporter of our first responders, and most especially when you go through something and they have your back. It's an incredible feeling, so appreciate it. There was a light moment where one of the firefighters said, we noticed that the Board of Supervisors has been really interested in what's going to be happening with fire, and so when you just showed up, we were like, did she just have a radio and she just comes out to fires across the county? I'm like, yeah, no, I don't really do that, but if I can be supportive, I'm happy to, but I don't think you really want me getting in your way at every fire, so anyway. But with that, we'll turn it over to the report of the county administrator.
Thank you. You have my report in your board package. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to try to answer them. Just want to take the closing for the holidays at James City County offices and the courthouse will be closed Monday, February the 19th in observance of the President's Day. Recreation Center, Abram Frink Jr. Community Center, and the libraries will be open for their regular hours. All county parks are open. I ask you to please check the county website for updates on the park, stores, and office. Also wanted to bring that the Citizens Information Meeting to be held for the potential alternative for Skips Creek Connector by the Virginia Department of Transportation will be held Thursday, February the 15th, and it will be at James River Elementary School. And that connector will be between Route 60 and Route 143 in the area between 199 and Route 238 in James City County. If you have any questions, that'll be the best place to go. It'll be between 6 and 8 at James River Elementary School. And that's all I have.
Thank you so much. With that, we are going to go into closed session for one, consideration of a personnel matter, the appointment of individuals to county boards and/or commissions pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A1 of the Code of Virginia. Also, two, discussion of the award of public contract involving the expenditure of public funds where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position of the public body pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A29 of the Code of Virginia. May I have a motion?
Motion.
Do I need a voice of
Yeah.
Mr. Porter?
Yes, ma'am. Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan? Aye. Ms. Sadler? Aye. Mr. Eisenhower? Aye. Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
All right, and then we will come out to make those appointments and to adjourn. All right, we are back from closed session, and may we get a certification?
Madam Chair, I move that we certify that we only spoke about those items we said we would discuss.
Mr. Porter?
Mr. Eisenhower?
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan?
Aye.
Ms. Sadler? Aye. Mr. Hippel?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
Motion carries.
Thank you.
Everybody agreed.
With that, if I could get a motion to recommend the reappointment of Mr. William Gibb for a new term that would begin, this is for the Board of Zoning Appeals. New term that would begin on April 1, 2018, expire on March 31st, 2023. Motion to recommend the appointment of Mark Jabowski for a term that would begin on April 1, 2018 and expire on March 31st, 2023. These will be for recommendations to the judge. We will be making our Planning Commission appointment at our next meeting. We going to do a BOE recommendation, Board of Equalization, to recommend the reappointment of Mr. Michael Berry to the Board of Zoning Appeals for a new term. Board of Equalization. Yes, I don't know. I'm sorry. I said that, and then it says Board of Zoning Appeals. So, sorry. Term that would begin on March 1st, 2018, expire on February 28, 2021. And we are going to recommend the appointment of Robert Singley Jr. To that same board. And then a motion to appoint Mary Ann Mamoni to fill the balance of an unexpired term on the Thomas Nelson Community College Board of Directors that will be effective immediately and expire on June 30, 2019. Can I do the contract for the awarding under the same? Okay. We're also going to approve a resolution entitled Contract Award County Administrator Search Firm in the amount of $26,150. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
All right, Mr. Porter?
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Mr. Hippel.
Aye.
Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Sadler. Ms. Larson.
Aye. All right, with that, we will adjourn until 4 p.m. on February 27th, 2018 for the work session.
Motion for adjournment?
Motion for adjournment, Mr. Porter?
Oh, yes.
You can do it whatever way.
Yeah. Mr. Eisenhower.
Aye.
Mr. McGlinnan.
Aye.
Ms. Sadler. Mr. Hippel. Ms. Larson.
Aye.